The fifth season of The Twilight Zone is considered by many to be its weakest season, but without it, we wouldn't have the classic episodes like Nightmare at 20,000 Feet, A Kind of a Stopwatch, The Masks, and, of course, Living Doll. What made this particular episode stand out as one of The Twilight Zone's scariest and most memorable? Let's find out on this episode of Rerun Zone. When Twilight Zone was canceled after the third season and then brought back for a fourth season, the show's continuing for a fifth season was anything but certain. In fact, Serling himself was beginning to have doubts about his own writing, saying, "I was writing so much, I felt I had begun to lose my perspective on what was good and what was bad." Charles Beaumont, who had scripted many Twilight Zone episodes, including The Howling Man, Shadow Play, and Long Live Walter Jameson, and was one of Twilight Zone's most prolific writers other than Rod himself, was suffering from an unknown brain disorder. It was an illness that kept him sidelined for most of the fourth and fifth seasons of the show. It forced Beaumont to turn to his friend and fellow writer Jerry Saul, who began to ghostwrite for Beaumont. Jerry did most of the writing on what would become the show's 126th episode, titled Living Doll. In the episode, a woman named Annabelle buys her daughter Christy a wind-up doll named Talkie Tina to make her feel better. Annabelle was played by Mary LaRoche, who was also in the Twilight Zone first season episode A World of His Own. When Christy winds the doll up, the doll says,
"My name is Talkie Tina, and I love you very much."
The doll used for Talkie Tina was manufactured by the Vogue Doll Company between 1959 and 1961 and marketed under the name Briquette. The original doll didn't talk, but the one used on Twilight Zone was modeled after the Chatty Cathy doll, which was being made by Mattel when this episode premiered. Both Chatty Cathy and Talkie Tina dolls were voiced by June Foray, the voice of Rocky the Flying Squirrel on The Bullwinkle Show. June was also a prolific voice actress at the time. Christy is played by Tracy Stratford, who is also the little girl that rolls out of bed into another dimension in the Twilight Zone episode Little Girl Lost. She was also the voice of Lucy Van Pelt in the 1965 cartoon classic A Charlie Brown Christmas. Christy's stepfather Eric, played as a bit of a jerk here by seasoned actor Telly Savalas, is angry when Annabelle and Christy bring home the new doll, asking how much it costs. He's not very happy about them spending the money on an expensive new doll, even after Christy proudly shows him how it moves and talks. Annabelle and Eric have words, and then as the doll starts to speak again, Eric yells at Christy to shut the doll off. Christy drops the doll, runs upstairs, and Annabelle goes up after her. When Annabelle and Christy are gone, Eric grabs the doll and winds it up himself. The doll has a very different greeting for Eric.
"My name is Talkie Tina, and I don't think I like you."
Here, the doll's voice has a quietly threatening tone, and Eric is startled by the doll's unexpected vocabulary. Savalas is best known for playing the role of Lieutenant Kojak in the crime drama series Kojak from 1973 to 1978. He also appeared in the movies The Dirty Dozen, Birdman of Alcatraz, and The Greatest Story Ever Told. When we come back from Serling's monologue, Eric is again winding up the doll, and it now says,
"I think I could even hate you."
Eric throws the doll against the wall in anger, and the doll says,
"You'll be sorry."
When Annabelle confronts him about throwing the doll, he tells her that he doesn't like what it says and winds up the doll to show her. But the doll just says, "I love you very much," and Eric looks like a fool. Even though Eric seems like a hard ass here, you almost feel sorry for him as he's being tricked by a doll. Eric apologizes to Christy and gives her the doll back. The shot dissolves, and now it's dinner time with Christy feeding the doll. Annabelle and Eric have more words over her buying the doll, and now dinner is interrupted by the doorbell. It's Christy's friend who wants her to come out and play. Christy wants to show her friend the doll, but Mom tells her not to take it outside, she can see it later. Christy leaves to play, and Eric is, again, left alone with the doll. We get a spooky close-up of Talkie Tina, and she tells Eric that she's beginning to hate him. Eric lights a cigarette and burns the doll's nose with a match. Tina yells in pain but tells Eric that he can't really hurt her, but she can hurt him. Eric accuses Annabelle and Christy of using a walkie-talkie to put words in the doll's mouth, and Annabelle starts to see that he's serious about Tina talking to him. You can tell that she's not sure if it's true or if maybe he's going a little crazy. Things start to get very dark here as Eric enters his workshop and finds Tina there on the bench. He shuts the door, picks the doll up, and throws it in the trash can. When Annabelle and Christy go looking for the doll, Eric plays dumb and says he doesn't know where it is. That is, until the phone rings. And guess who's on the other end? This is the part where the doll tells Eric that she's going to kill him, and the look on his face is classic. Eric still thinks Annabelle and Christy are playing tricks on him as he hangs up the phone and goes to look in the trash can. But guess what? Tina's not there. Eric's starting to look worried now as Annabelle swears she hasn't seen the doll. Eric says if it's not you, it must be Christy doing it. He runs upstairs, opens Christy's door, and sees the doll lying next to Christy, who's fast asleep. When Eric comes close, the doll slowly opens its eyes and says,
I told you you'd be sorry. Christy, Christy, wake up, Christy.
Here, things get pretty terrifying as he takes the doll back to his workshop and then tries everything he can think of to destroy it. First, Eric puts the doll's head in a vice grip. When that doesn't work, he tries to burn it with a torch, but the torch keeps going out. Then he uses a table saw to try and cut the doll's head off, but it won't cut through the neck. In fact, there's not even a scratch on the doll. He stuffs the doll in a sack, ties it up, and throws it back in the trash can. You can still hear the doll laughing through all this. You can tell by the look on Eric's face that he knows he's in serious trouble now. In the next scene, Annabelle's packing to leave. She tells Eric he needs a good psychiatrist, but Eric insists that the doll has been saying terrible things to him and that he's not imagining it. When he realizes that she's really going to leave him, he asks if giving the doll back to Christy will make everything okay. Annabelle doesn't answer, but Eric retrieves the doll from the trash can, unwraps the sack, and the doll again comes to life.
My name is Talkie Tina, and I don't forgive you.
Eric slowly climbs the stairs and hands the doll back to Christy. Later that night, while sleeping, Eric hears a noise and gets up to investigate. He probably should have stayed in bed, as we all know by now what's coming. First, he checks Christy's room, but the doll's not there. He closes her door, hears the noise again, and starts to go downstairs. As he does, he trips on the doll, falls down the stairs, and dies with the doll lying next to him. Annabelle screams when she sees him lying at the bottom of the stairs, runs down the steps, and kneels over him while picking up the doll. In a classic Twilight Zone moment that every fan has burned into their brain, the doll says,
My name is Talkie Tina, and you'd better be nice to me.
Well, I guess Annabelle finally believes Eric. It's a little late for him, though. What did you think of this episode? Is it right up there at the top of your Twilight Zone list? Let me know in the comments below, and as always, this is Rich from Rerun Zone, signing off.